Hello students, welcome to my class. This is Professor Vincent Osaya and this is part 4 of chapter 9 presentation. Chapter 9, plant assets, natural resources, and intangibles and intangibles. Now, let's take a look at the objective number 4, how we account for natural resources. We said that the natural resources come from the earth and are usually consumed. The value of the reserves that the company owes control is a long-term asset. In other words, this is one of the examples of non-current assets. Now, here are some of the examples of natural resources. Iron oil, natural gas, coal, timber, so on and so forth. So the issue here is, how do we account for natural resources? They are usually extracted. So because of that, we said that depletion expense is applicable. So what do we mean by that? When we talk about plant assets, we said that plant assets have more than 1 year useful life, and the cost of a plant asset is allocated over its useful life. And we said that we compute depreciation expense using 3 different methods. Now, the depreciation concept is very similar to depletion. Here we are also allocating the cost of the natural resources over the period of time, or based upon how much of the resources that are extracted. So we just use another fancy word for the allocation of the cost, and we call it a depletion expense for natural resources. Now we also create an accumulated depletion, which is also a contra account, just like we have accumulated depreciation. Now the steps that we use in calculating the depletion expense are very similar to units of production method. So the first thing we do is we complete the depletion per unit, and we compute the depletion for the period based on the amount of extraction. So these are the rules. Suffice it to say at this point, when we talk about plant asset, the related expense is depreciation expense. When we talk about natural resources, the related expense is called depletion expense. When we talk about intangibles, the related expense is called amortization. So these are all different fancy names that we use for this related expense, depending on which of the 3 that we are talking about. Now let's take a look at the application of these rules that we just talked about. So this company owns oil reserve that costs $700,000 and is estimated to contain 70,000 barrels of oil. During the year, 3,000 barrels of oil were extracted. So how do we calculate the depletion for that particular year? Take a look at the approach. The first step is we calculate the depletion per unit. How do we do that? Just like the units of production method, we subtract the residual value from the cost. In this case, we figured out that the residual value is 0, and we divide it by the estimated reserve. So 0 from 700,000 will give you $700,000 divided by 70,000 barrels, and that will give you $10,000 per barrel. So we are going to compute our depletion based on the number of extraction for that particular year. So in this current year, we extracted 3,000 barrels multiplied by $10 depletion per unit, and that gives us $30,000 depletion expense for that year. So let's take a look at how we make the journal entry. We debit depletion expense for $30,000, and we credit the accumulated depletion for $30,000. So that is basically it for natural resources. Now let's take a look at the last piece, and these are intangible assets. What are intangible assets? We said that intangible assets are those assets that confer or give some rights to the owners. Number one. Number two, we said that intangible assets do not have a physical substance like plant assets. Hence we call them intangible assets. Even though they are intangible, they are assets nevertheless, because they give some special privileges or rights to the owners. So we said that these are assets that have no physical substance, like we said. They are recorded at cost. So another important thing I want you to know here is research and development costs are not included in intangible assets. So here are some of the examples of intangible assets. We have the patent, we have copyright, trademark, franchise, licenses, goodwill, so on and so forth. Copyright, let me just emphasize that. That gives you the right to enjoy the royalties of your, for example, a musical piece. Michael Jackson has so many songs, and he's going to enjoy the privilege of the royalty of those songs, and of course he has passed on, and those rights are being passed on to his heir. So let's take a look at what we do with the cost of intangible assets. As they expire, we say we have to amortize them. So the amortization expense is recorded based on the straight line method. Now, of course, we can use the shorter, the useful life, or the legal life as well. So only for intangible assets we have a definite life. Now, for intangible assets, we do not have a contra account. The intangible assets accounts are being decreased directly with the related amortization expense. So that is basically it for part 4 of chapter 9. Appendix 9A talks about the exchange of the accounting or the journal entries for exchange of plant assets. That subject matter is being deferred to upper level accounting courses. So that is the conclusion of chapter 9, plant assets, natural resources, and intangibles.